Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this, the Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today it is another day of clown decading where for some reason the British politicians and British media for some reason seem to think we are America. In by a black guy getting shot means for some reason we have this whole history of slavery and oppression and red tape in the 60s to stop black people buying houses that just quite frankly didn't even exist in this country. But hey, it keeps working, so why would the activists stop? Now, our first story actually comes from before the Clown Decade in 2018, where we were simply just warming up to the Clown Decade. Man 19 charged with Canning Town shooting, which is never a good start to stories like this. A man has appeared in court following a firearms incident in Canning Town. Police were investigating reports of shots being fired in Butchers Road at around 3:25 a.m. on December 30th. Chris Kaba, a 19-year-old from Sydenham, South London, was charged on Sunday with possession of a firearm with intent to cause fear or violence. He appeared in custody at Thames Magistrate Court yesterday. And the results of this is that he then appeared at Snaresbrook Crown Court in January 2019 when he was found guilty of possessing an imitation firearm. He was sentenced to 4 years in a Young Offenders Institute, which I find very strange given that he was over the age of 18 and therefore should have been put in an adult's prison, but was released more than a year ago, so sometime in 2021, so he will have been in prison for a maximum of about 2 years. And his family has insisted that he was working hard to turn his life around and had ambitions of becoming an architect, which there is no family in the world that will not tell the papers that their son was a good boy, and this may very well be true. The thing is, you then get into details of the shooting. Police shoot dead drill rapper Chris Kaba after car chase in South London. The Met Police refers itself for investigation after the 24-year-old father-to-be was shot in Streatham Hill area. A drill rapper who was due to become a father has been shot dead by police following a high-speed car chase in South London. Chris Kaba, 24, died when armed officers rammed his car before opening fire in a quiet residential street in the Streatham Hill area. Locals described how police used their own cars to box in the Audi Q8 while shouting at the driver to get out. But witnesses claimed the driver ignored police requests to give himself up, and when he attempted to ram his way out of the roadblock, officers opened fire. Scotland Yard said the victim was given first aid at the scene and was airlifted to hospital, but died a short time after. Which to me sounds exactly like what would happen if you ignored requests by armed officers to get out of your car and surrender, and instead try and ram your way out of the situation. And luckily, a month later, after this news came out, the Independent Office for Police Conduct posted this initial statement. On Monday, 5 September 2022, Mr. Chris Kaba was driving an Audi motor vehicle in South London. The Audi Mr. Kaba was driving was believed to be linked to a firearms incident which took place the previous day, and an automatic number plate recognition marker had been placed upon it. A briefing was provided to officers prior to their shift on 5 September in which the Audi was brought to their attention as being potentially associated with a firearms incident the previous day. So that's already going to put officers on high alert. There's probably guns in the car. Mr. Kaba's name was not included in the briefing because they probably didn't know who was going to be driving the car, and it also wasn't registered to him. According to police logs and accounts received to date by officers, the Audi was recognised by officers parked at the side of the A202 in Camberwell Green in an unmarked armed response vehicle. The officers then started to follow the vehicle and circulated this via police airwaves at around 9:52 p.m. So as far as officers know, they have found the vehicle, they are keeping eyes on it, and they have no idea who's driving it. Officers continued to follow the Audi until 10:07 p.m. The officers did not activate their lights or sirens while following the vehicle. The intention was to use an enforced stop extraction. In layman's terms, this is a manoeuvre where vehicles will surround a car and force it to stop. At around 10:07 p.m, Mr. Kaba made a left turn from Park New Road onto Kirkstall Gardens. Already present on Kirkstall Gardens were a marked police armed response vehicle. The marked ARV had parked on Kirkstall Gardens with the intention of joining the other police vehicles behind the Audi once this had passed the junction. One of the officers inside the marked ARV was NX121, the officer in question, who shot Mr. Kaba. And once Mr. Kaba made the left turn, the decision was taken to perform an inline extraction, which is another police tactic where a vehicle is not moving very fast or stationary. Armed officers will move upon the assailant and try and arrest him by having him get out of the vehicle and putting the handcuffs on him. Obviously, the threat of having firearms typically means that they will listen to you. And did this happen in this case? Obviously not. Armed officers exited their vehicles and approached the Audi. The evidence suggests that contact was made between the Audi driven by Mr. Kaba and the police vehicles. Now, according to the Telegraph article, this was actually the armed response vehicle ramming into the Audi. The evidence further suggests that Officer NX121 was standing to the front of Mr. Kaba's vehicle. A single shot was fired by Officer NX121, piercing the front windscreen of the vehicle Mr. Kaba was driving and struck him. Officers were at the scene, provided first aid to Mr. Kaba before he was taken to King's College Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 12:16 a.m. on Tuesday, 6 September 2022. Now, this is a very summarised version of events because it doesn't even include the fact that witnesses were there to attest that Mr. Kaba not only ignored police orders to get out the vehicle and surrender, but also attempted to ram the police roadblock. It's also not mentioned that there were actually no firearms found in the car, but obviously how are police officers supposed to know that before they've been able to investigate the car? But anyway, naturally, this whole episode had led to the family of the deceased naturally being the centre of media attention for the next few weeks.
A family still coming to terms with the killing of their son, 23-year-old Chris Kaba, who died following a police chase on Monday night.
Now, obviously, the family's upset. This is nothing short of a tragedy. It is never, ever a good instance when someone is shot dead. And no police officer generally ever feels good about shooting anyone, even if it is to save their own life. But it's just the complete lack of context from the BBC, because straight away it's, look at this very sad family. They are sad that their son has been killed, as they obviously would be. Oh, they make it seem like an accident. Oh, he was sadly killed after a police chase last week or whenever it was. And all they have to add in there to make me not think they're trying to craft a didn't-do-nothing narrative here is say something as simple as he was driving a car involved in a firearms incident, because then you understand a bit more of the context of, oh, maybe the police had their reasons then. Because as it is now, it's making out like the police are lunatics with guns, which is the last thing they are in the United Kingdom.
Officers say they used a tactic where they deliberately collided with the Audi he was driving to make him stop, and then Chris was shot.
Do you see what I mean, though? Nothing about the fact that they ordered him out the vehicle and he refused to comply. Nothing about witnesses saying that he tried to ram the roadblock or anything like that. The way this is reported, it's making it out like it was an execution. Whereas even the independent report acknowledges that the officer who shot Mr. Kaba was in front of the vehicle as he was still at the steering wheel and driving.
Really, we are shocked to see that in this century, from specialists of the law like police can shortcut someone's life, especially a young boy.
I'm sorry, but he was 24. He wasn't a young boy at all. He was a young adult at best. A young adult who was already put in prison, a young offenders institute for some reason, for a firearms offence. And I don't understand this base position of the police shouldn't be able to ever shoot anybody. I am of the quite popular opinion that the police are well within their rights to shoot violent criminals who are in the process of putting anyone else in any sort of violent danger. I don't see the issue with that. And according to eyewitness testimony, that's exactly what Chris Kaba was doing. So don't get me wrong, I understand that you're upset and sad about this, but these are the inevitable consequences of actions like Kaba's.
There are tensions in the black community in South London, all demanding answers. Chris Kaba was due to become a father within months. He was well known locally by his rap artist name Maddox.
Again, drill rapper, which is quite infamous for being a popular genre with the gangs of London. Not that I'm necessarily saying that if you do partake in drill rap, you are a gangster, but you can definitely see the profile here. Am I saying he deserved to get shot for being a drill rapper and having a previous criminal conviction? No, I am saying that he was obviously going to be shot, and it is well within guidelines to shoot assailants who are putting people and officers in immediate danger.
My heart is broken. I'm speechless. My heart is broken. Police is taking Chris from me. I don't know how to say, but I need justice to be done. The justice to be done for Chris. This is very racist. It's not good.
Obviously, you're going to have a mother in mourning when her son has been killed tragically early in his life. But again, it's the complete assumption of, I want justice to be done. The implication there being, I want these officers in jail for killing my son. And that obviously is going to be a natural reaction here. But we're already near the end of this BBC segment, and throughout it, there is no context as to why the officers shot. They have just implied that he didn't do anything wrong. He was just some random black guy driving a car at night, and the police just decided to ram his car and shoot him. That's all the implication has been here so far, and it is completely upside down from what happened.
The Metropolitan Police has expressed its condolence to the family, but says it won't be commenting any further as the shooting is being investigated by the independent police watchdog, the IOPC.
Which is fair enough from the police's side. They are not allowed to comment while the independent watchdog is making its investigations. So what can they say? And yet the BBC is here having no apology for the Met Police whatsoever, which, okay, it's the Met Police. They do a lot of things wrong. But when you do have an ongoing investigation and you are reporting on that, you should probably give something in their defence. Given this report appears to be only giving about half the facts, and they happen to be the facts that give absolutely no context as to why police were going after the Audi or why they decided to shoot inside.
Where are you, my son? Where are you, my...
But the family say they want answers and are accusing the Metropolitan Police of racism. They want more details as to the circumstances behind the killing of their much-loved son, who they claim was unarmed.
Well, this is the thing as well. There's an ongoing investigation, so you are going to get answers in the end. But on the whole, he was an armed thing. Yes, that is true. And again, the police didn't actually know who was in the car. All they knew is that Audi AQ, it was related to a firearms incident, get armed officers on the scene, follow the car, get it to stop. Obviously, we don't know what's in the car. There could be firearms in the car if it's related to a firearms incident. And it's perfectly reasonable for you to discharge at the assailant should he not comply with your orders. And obviously, if your car is surrounded by armed officers, if you don't comply with them, there's obviously only one thing that's going to happen. So naturally, because it was a black guy who was shot, Black Lives Matter in Britain had a large protest where the family was involved, and of course a bunch of Labour politicians, including Jeremy Corbyn, were involved. Let's see how that was reported on.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
No justice, no peace. Chris Kaba's mother and father are living it.
Well, that's a hell of an opening statement at a protest of an ongoing investigation, isn't it? Already this news report, done by Channel 4 News, is saying there has been no justice in this case whatsoever. We don't know that yet. It's not even gone to court at this point. We've not even got the news that we got this week that we're going to go into. It's amazing the ideological infestation in our media that has led straight to these assumptions. All they know is that the officer who shot their son is being investigated on a criminal matter. They don't know if it's going to go to trial yet, they don't know if he's going to be charged yet. All they know is that their incident is being investigated. That is them getting their justice. That is the judicial process. And for Channel 4 to come forward and claim that they are living in a world of no justice and peace for themselves, that is patently absurd.
In a crowd of hundreds, their grief is personal, but they know for an entire community, much is at stake.
They don't know that. You don't know that at all. All you know is that a black man was shot because he was in a car related to a firearms incident. And according to witnesses at the scene, he was not following the police orders to surrender, and in fact he tried to ram the roadblock with an officer between said car and said roadblock. Now, obviously, if there is further evidence on that, we are going to have to wait for the final reports to come out. But at this point in time, when this news article was put out more than a year ago, we had no idea about any of that. But Channel 4 appear to already know the outcome of all this, which is quite the foresight for a news channel.
Time was taken to see to the family's well-being, whilst speakers rallied for social change.
Oh, of course, whenever there's an ongoing investigation where we are not entirely sure of the outcome yet, you can ensure that Jeremy Corbyn and Diane Abbott are there to let them know that they know that this was due to racism, they know that this was an injustice, and they know that all the poor oppressed communities those non-white, those gay, those transsexual communities throughout Britain, they know that they are the only good guys in the country and they are completely on their side. Of course, there are socialist worker banners there as well, but really, you just expect all of this at this point. And the only way that they're going to manage to get this to change is if the high-status ideology of wokeness, intersectionality, whatever you want to call it, is put away for good. And it appears that that is exactly what Keir Starmer is at least attempting to do, and what the Tories have completely failed to do, despite the fact they are supposed to be a right-wing party. Fortunately, I can see the whole thing collapsing in on itself in the universities, where this stuff all really matters, within the coming decade. So hopefully, this will be the last decade where we actually see all this nonsense, at least this specific version of insanity.
Temi Mwale, a community activist, said, "You can't put a schedule on grief." But what about the justice system?
I think this system is beyond reform, and whilst the police have the resources, the tools, the public support and the lack of accountability that we see today and have seen historically, we can continue to see Chris's case and other cases like him. We'll continue to see people being harmed by the police.
Now, I do actually think that the Met Police in the UK is one of the worst police forces in the UK. Others aren't that great either. There are plenty of examples of them working outside of guidelines, being incredibly heavy-handed with the law, completely ignoring crimes in some cases. And of course, there's been the huge investigation recently into genuine rapists and sexual assaults being committed by Met police officers. However, if we look at individual cases, and this particular individual case, while the investigation is still going on, you can't say that there's no accountability in this particular case when there's clearly an investigation going on and he's being investigated in a criminal matter. That is being held accountable. And obviously I don't want to get to any spoilers, but, well, you've seen the title of this video. Why the hell is the army going to be involved? Well, you're just going to have to wait and find out.
On Monday night, Chris Kaba was shot by armed police. The Met says his car was stopped after the automatic number plate recognition camera was activated. It indicated the car had been linked to a firearms offence in the days before.
Well, at this point, Channel 4 is doing a better job at reporting this incident than the BBC. Obviously, they went completely one side when it came to reporting on the protest, but then when it comes to actually reporting the fact of the incident, I suppose at least they are giving the minimal, fair and honest facts of the incident. So, well done Channel 4 for having basic integrity, I suppose. But you still screwed it up at the beginning by saying that the parents are seeing absolutely no justice when, as you have just said, an investigation is going on.
Yesterday, the police watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, confirmed that the vehicle wasn't registered to Chris Kaba.
I've seen people say that this means that he stole the vehicle. That doesn't mean he stole the vehicle. That just means the vehicle is registered in someone else's name. Kaba can still drive the vehicle if he is insured on the vehicle, or if he has insurance that lets him drive any vehicle, and obviously has the permission from the registered owner. However, again, the police didn't know who was driving the vehicle. They just knew that it was related to a firearms incident, and so obviously responded with firearms officers.
The officer isn't on operational duties at the moment, and the Met stress that the IOPC's investigation doesn't mean any criminal offence has been proven.
Yes, the independent watchdog is mainly there just to gather evidence and write a report on the events that took place. This can then be used in court to be used as evidence on the criminal case. However, as we have just heard, the officer isn't on duty anymore. He's not allowed to be until he's been cleared of all this. How is that not seeing justice? How is that not being held accountable? These protesters don't know anything they're talking about, and yet Jeremy Corbyn and his little entourage will obviously be on hand to complain about the racism that is rife in Britain.
Things have moved quickly this week. Chris Kaba was shot on Monday night, and yesterday the police watchdog announced a homicide investigation into his death. But this protest is partly about the slow-moving nature of the justice system, and that's why the headquarters of the Metropolitan Police is the final destination for these protesters.
Criminal investigations in the UK are always relatively slow because they want to absolutely review everything, make sure they've got all the evidence that they need to charge a person, and because there's many different institutions, watchdogs and pieces of bureaucracy that have to all come together to make a criminal case against this officer. Now, could it be done quicker? Yes, almost definitely. There is far too much bureaucracy in the United Kingdom. Are these protesters going to be complaining about the bureaucracy? No, they are basically just going to be complaining that if a black man has been shot by a police officer, why is the police officer not put into jail for life the next day? Which is just completely arbitrary, because there are of course incidents and situations where it's perfectly reasonable to discharge firearms.
There's a really serious issue about the lack of accountability when people die in such circumstances. And in the last 3 decades, just by example, there has only been one successful manslaughter prosecution, and that followed the death of Dalian Atkinson.
So what, there's a minimum number of manslaughter prosecutions we need per year to see justice? Is that what you're saying? Because criminals being shot in the UK is an incredibly rare occurrence. And in fact, just quickly looking at the table for fatal police shootings in England and Wales from 1990 to 2023, we can see that in total for the Met Police there were only 33 incidents. From other forces there were 47 incidents, and in total for 3 decades throughout England and Wales 80 people have been fatally shot by the police. That averages to about 3 a year. That is absolutely nothing, especially when compared to other countries, especially America. And that's because we have very, very strict guidelines on when we are able to even use armed police forces. And of course they have even stricter guidelines and intense training on when they're even allowed to discharge. If anything, 1 incident out of 80 is really, really good going. But obviously this whole process is just about if black guys shot, police instantly go to jail. Because they think we're America. And these stats alone show that we're not.
The IOPC confirms that the officer in question has been served a criminal and gross misconduct notice. The family say they want more answers. Has the officer been suspended? When will they get the body cam footage? And how long will the investigation take?
Well, luckily they did end up getting all those answers. As just this week we found out, Chris Kaba, Met police officer to be charged with murder. Yes, the investigation has apparently found out that this needs to be taken to a criminal court. Now, from all the information that has come out publicly, I am very, very surprised that this has happened. And hopefully, as this court case goes on, we will find out why this even went to court, because I am just puzzled at how it has got to this point. And I am not alone in that. A police officer has been charged with murder of Chris Kaba, who was shot in South London last year. The Met police officer, who has not been named, will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday, where he will be formally charged. The police watchdog said the officer and Mr Kaba's family have been notified of the decision on Wednesday morning. Will it be enough? Will they be happy with it? No, of course not. They want him in prison for life. And honestly, I can see this trial ending in the acquittal of said officer. The Crown Prosecution Service has had the file of evidence since March following a referral from the Independent Office for Police Conduct. So it took 7 months for them to go through the IOPC's findings and decide that they need to charge him. So I'm wondering what they found in that. The police watchdog previously said no non-police issue firearm had been found following a detailed search of the car and surrounding area after the shooting, meaning that it was an even stupider idea for Chris Kaba to try and ram his way out, assuming initial eyewitness testimony is to be believed. Rosemary Ainsley, head of the CPS Special Crime Division, said the CPS had conducted a thorough review of the evidence. The officer is currently suspended from duty, and the Met said it will consider misconduct matters after criminal proceedings have concluded. So it appears that even after a trial has concluded, and even if he is found innocent, then the officer in question will still have to face a misconduct procedure from the Met itself. So it appears that no matter what happens here, something bad is going to happen to this firearms officer, and at this point I just want to know why. And hopefully we will find out why sometime in the future, because just at the moment, from what I can tell from all this, the officer didn't do anything wrong. And it appears that firearms officers agree. Met Police Chief seeks legal protection for officers after scores down firearms. More than 100 officers have reportedly handed in permits allowing them to carry weapons. And this is obviously in protest of one of their own being given a show trial for the Black Lives Matter activists, because from what I can tell from everything we have read so far, that is the only reason that I can see for this. But obviously, there might be things in the investigation that have not been made public yet that may be perfectly reasonable for it to go to a criminal trial. Because just saying he must have been a racist officer and was out for blood of a black man, that isn't good enough. There has been no evidence of that. Yes, scores of Metropolitan officers stood down from firearms duties after murder charge against one of their colleagues. It's been reported that more than 100 officers has handed in what is known as a blue ticket permit. that allows them to carry firearms, but full firearms protections remain for royalty, diplomats and politicians. Scotland Yard requested military support for counter-terrorism duties if armed officers are unavailable, and Sir Mark welcomed a review into the situation by Home Secretary Suella Braverman and told her in a letter to let the police police. Yes, a direct request by the Metropolitan Police Commissioner and the Home Secretary have been made to the Army to request firearm support because there might not be enough police to counter terrorism in London. And this is obviously an example of industrial action actually working. If there is a mass protest of officers for what is, in their opinion, a complete injustice in their line of work, then obviously having a protest of that and effectively saying we are not going to put our lives on the line if it means that we are also at risk of criminal investigation and trial for what they think is following the guidelines, then clearly they have quite the strong position to actually make these demands, and they appear to be coming through. And the Times goes into slightly more detail on this. Emergency powers to call the armed forces are usually deployed for big events such as the London Olympics, bomb disposal or flooding, and the need to bring in the military shows how far Scotland Yard has been stretched by firearm officers withdrawing their services. The soldiers will have no power of arrest, but obviously if there is a direct risk of violence, I have no doubt that they have permission to discharge. The Metropolitan Police said the Ministry would provide the Met with counter-terrorism support should it be needed. This contingency option that would only be used in specific circumstances and where an appropriate policing response was not available. Armed Forces personnel will not be used in routine police capacity. We will be keeping the need for the support under constant review. So it's obviously only for very serious counter-terrorism matters that the army will actually be brought in, but from the sound of it, that is when they will be brought in anyway. It's just they will have more support than usual in this case. But it just goes to show how far-stretched the armed police have become over this protest, and I have no doubt that the Home Secretary and Metropolitan Commissioner will do what they need to do to try and make sure that the armed police get the protections they need, because I don't think you would see this protest if they didn't think there was good reason to do so. I mean, as the woman said in the Channel 4 interview before, there have been charges brought forward and prosecutions made on armed officers for manslaughter. And there's never been a walkout like this before, so that only says to me that they were deserved charges. And in this case, it doesn't seem to be the case. As mentioned in the article, Suella Braverman did indeed make a public statement about the review into these police matters. She tweeted saying, "We depend on our brave firearm officers to protect us from the most dangerous and violent in society. In the interest of public safety, they have to make split-second decisions under extraordinary pressure. They mustn't fear ending up in the dock for carrying out their duties. Officers risking their lives to keep us safe have my full backing, and I will do everything in my power to support them. That's why I have launched a review to ensure that they have confidence to do their jobs while protecting us all." And this seems like a perfectly reasonable statement to make. There has been an officer who has been put in the dock or is currently being charged for a murder while on the line of duty when it appears, according to other firearms officers and even the Met Police Commissioner himself, that this should never have gone to court, at least with the public information we have at the moment. However, a lot of leftists are trying to claim that this is a tweet that is perverting the course of justice, which is a really silly thing to say because that is only when intimidating witnesses or withholding evidence that could potentially damage police investigations or waste court's time. All Suella Braverman has said here is that when police officers are out on the line of duty risking their lives, they need the guarantee that if they do follow the guidelines for discharging firearms and doing their line of work, they need protection and a guarantee that they will not go to court for following said guidelines. Hence, she is saying that she will do a review of the matters and institutions that can lead a firearm officer to go to court, because if your police officers don't have that guarantee, obviously they're going to do exactly as we have seen, which is this mass protest. And if what Suella Braverman has done here is pervert the course of justice, then that means that all firearm officers who have handed in their permits are also guilty of the same crime. But that would be a ridiculous thing to say. But finally, I think it's worth seeing what the arch-Blacktivist Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu has to say about this whole situation.
I commend these police officers for handing in their weapons in protest and outing themselves as depraved human beings. I unequivocally condemn their depravity for wanting to use the police badge as a shield to protect them from accountability and as a weapon to kill with impunity.
I think it's worth actually mentioning at this point just how restrained firearm officers actually are in the UK, because obviously we went through the amount of fatal incidents as a result of police shootings since 1990, but even in this specific case, one round was fired. One round, it hit its target, it ended the incident. Again, going off eyewitness testimony, it sounds like the officer was in front of the car as it was about to try and go and ram the police roadblock. You are obviously going to feel in danger when that happens, and having the trigger discipline to only fire one round and hit your target, that's actually incredible trigger discipline. And yet Dr. Shola here is making out that the police had 10 officers all on automatic fire mag dumping this car when it was one round fired through a windscreen and hit its target. The firearms officers are clearly okay with being held accountable, as there has never been a protest like this despite having criminal investigations and, of course, criminal convictions and manslaughter handed to their colleagues before. They obviously feel this decision to take this to a murder charge is going way far out of line. But Dr. Shola is the type of person that wants accountability to be overemphasised on effectively all white people and all institutions that are majority white and have absolutely no accountability or agency for any black community. That is her unironic position, as she makes clear every time she is on a BBC panel show.
And it's reprehensible that they use the unjustified killing and murder of Chris Kaba as their heel to protest.
Independent reviews haven't come to a conclusion on that, and the court case hasn't even started yet. You have no idea if it was justified or not. I have no idea if it was justified or not. This is why I have not said it is or isn't justified. I have said it seems very confusing the way that this has gone to court, as there has been no clear public statement or evidence that has come out publicly that points to the officer having broken any sort of guideline or committed a crime. That is not to say it is justified. That is to say, we need to see the evidence come out before we can say either way. And obviously, if it does go to court, which it will do inevitably, we will find out if it is justified or not.
And here you have Home Secretary Cruella spouting off about most dangerous and violent, when Chris Kaba was neither dangerous or violent in that moment. He was unarmed.
I do, again, absolutely love how she had to put the clarification in there of Chris Kaba wasn't dangerous or violent in that moment, because he has been before. Hence he was handed a 4-year sentence on a firearms charge. And even in that moment, according to eyewitness testimony, which will come up in court, he was trying to ram the roadblock. That is being dangerous and violent, hence he was shot. Of course, if it comes out in court that there's no evidence that that's what he did, then fair enough. Maybe this was an unjustified killing, but I'm going off the evidence we have at the moment.
When that police officer took aim and shot him dead.
Yeah, that tends to be a risk when you're surrounded by armed officers.
And yes, police have to make split-second decisions in high-pressure situations with firearms. But let me ask, what is the point of the millions of taxpayers' money on their training if they cannot tell the difference or distinction when making a split-second decision?
Shola does know that a car can crush someone, right? Cars can be used as a very effective weapon. She's acting like Chris Kaba got out the car, had his hands up, got on his knees, and they went behind him and executed him behind the head, which is not what happened at all.
This tells me that the police don't want to be held to account for committing crimes. They don't even want to acknowledge that they make mistakes.
What mistake was made? You have not even got details of what happened correct.
That they're human and get it wrong from time to time. Because you see, acknowledging that you've made a mistake means taking responsibility for your actions. And taking responsibility requires that justice be delivered to those that you have deprived of life and liberty.
Again, the police officers aren't protesting because they don't think they should be held accountable. They are protesting because this looks like a political attack on their profession and on their duty to protect the innocent civilians, the people who have a right to life and liberty because they have done nothing wrong. Whereas Chris Kaba was ignoring armed police commands to surrender himself and, again according to eyewitness testimony, tried to ram his way out.
The job of the police is not to be judge, jury, and executioner. Their first action should be to disable, disarm, and de-escalate.
Yes, completely agree, but this also involves the suspect complying with the orders from the police. when they are being ignored, and he, according to eyewitness testimony, was trying to ram his way through officers and a roadblock, then de-escalation attempts have clearly failed, and the criminal has made a risk, and part of that risk is ending his life. And he should fully know that. Armed police don't exactly conceal their firearms.
But time and time again, we see the police doing the very opposite. In fact, commission report after commission report shows that the police institution has some of the worst cultural practices and behaviors. So what this Met chief and what the police wants is legal protection that gives them blanket immunity to weaponize the police against the very people they are meant to protect and serve.
No, they don't want a free pass to kill absolutely anyone they want. That would be ridiculous. They have made it quite clear that they believe that this incident was well within the guidelines, and if you are within the guidelines and following your training as an armed police officer, there is absolutely no reason that you should be taken to court. That is what their complaint is.
But I say hell no, not on our watch. To the armed police protesters, I say you should take your protest a step further, pack up your SHIT and get the hell out of the police. You're not fit for purpose and you have no business being in the police. You should be part of the rot they root out. To the good police, I say thank you for doing your job day in, day out, and understanding that your job comes with the highest scrutiny.
It's just incredible, isn't it? It's not quite ACAB, but it is certainly all firearms officers are bees. Absolutely every single one of them. That armed police officer that took out the terrorist on London Bridge, yeah, you're part of the rot. You are part of the rot for stopping a criminal who was on London Bridge trying to attack perfectly innocent people. You are part of the rot and you deserve jail time, according to Dr. Scholar. Just a completely absurd position, quite clearly. But this is what happens when you have doctor in your Twitter handle. You are simply trying to signal your qualifications and that you are above everyone else, and ironically, makes you think that you are above scrutiny because you think you know better than everyone else. And given the fact that her PhD was in law, I genuinely find it quite astonishing that she doesn't see the need for armed police officers, because that's essentially what she said. There is absolutely no need whatsoever for armed police. That is patently absurd. Out of 80 fatal shootings from the police throughout the UK, one manslaughter charge, that's pretty good going, as I say. But I can't imagine she was that good a lawyer, given that she seems to be trying her best to grift her way onto every panel show she can and go around talking about these quote-unquote injustices as if she is living in America. Which again is another quite amazing thing about Dr. Scholar, as she was an attorney in New York, as she would surely know the differences that the police enforcement have in America and Britain, and yet she's acting as if they're exactly the same. But hey, she doesn't get that panel money if she doesn't keep talking this nonsense. Anyway, that's everything I had for you today. I will say just keep an eye on this case. I can't see the army being brought in too much over this. I can't see the court case ending up with a conviction of murder for the police officer in question, but I can see less and less people wanting to become police officers, as it is a completely thankless job, and even when you do your job, all you hear from the media is how you are effectively just evil people. So the money can't be worth that, and I completely understand why they're all leaving. But anyway, that's all I had for you today, so once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.